Kellyanne Conway, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Chuck.
Let me start with Cuba, because on this issue, you could take some of his statements and say he's been on both sides of what President Obama has done in trying to reopen up relations with Cuba. He said he was fine with it back in the spring. Late in the campaign, he seemed to indicate that he wanted to reverse some of the changes that he made. What can you clarify with us this morning on Cuba policy when it comes to President Trump?
Several things, Chuck. First, President-elect Trump put out a very strong statement yesterday about Fidel Castro. He is not going to be one of these people romanticizing Fidel Castro as a hero. He knows he was a dictator who oppressed and imprisoned and harmed and murdered people, separated families, and really has many decades of blood on his hands. So let's be clear there. On the issue of diplomatic relations being reopened with Cuba, what President-elect Trump says is that he'd be open to that himself, but that we got nothing in return. We're allowing commercial aircraft there. We pretend that we're actually doing business with the Cuban people now, when really we're doing business with the Cuban government and the Cuban military. They still control everything. And see, he doesn't want any of us to be fooled. This is very much in keeping with the America first, Americans first, America, her allies, her interests abroad first policies of President-elect Trump. You see it in trade. You see it here with respect to Cuba. He wants to make sure we get things in return. And it's not always this unilateral capitulation to these foreign governments. Secondly, he's been very clear that the major priority now is to make sure Cubans on Cuba have the same freedoms that Cubans here in America have, which is political, religious, and economic freedom. Make sure those political prisoners are finally released into freedom, and make sure the American fugitives face the law.
So concretely, is he rolling back? Is he just going to reinstitute the embargo immediately and then go to Congress? What is he going to do when he takes office?
None of that has been decided. The president-elect will make those decisions and will make those announcements once he is president. We have a president in office for 8 more weeks, and we're very respectful of that.
No, I understand that, but doesn't he, if he is going to change it, there are many people who are making plans based on whether policy is going to change. Is it a definite that policy is going to change, or is it possible he keeps some of these changes in place?
Nothing is definite. He'll be speaking with his advisors, and he'll be applying the same brilliance and instinct and that he applied all throughout the campaign to all of these issues. And frankly, Chuck, I think the first order of business here, now that the dictator is gone, is to see how much we can do as, frankly, a world community, if not the United States of America, to try to get these political prisoners to freedom. I've met some of them, those who have been released. I've met many of these family members whose lives were devastated, whose entire families were separated, if not destroyed. You know the stories that Senator Rubio, Senator
Is he willing
Cruz
to shut down? But let me ask you this.
Have.
I know the stories very well. Is he willing to essentially shut down this diplomatic rapprochement on behalf of these political prisoners? Does he want to completely shut that down, or does he still want to keep that open?
That's for discussion. That's certainly on the table. And this is what leaders do. Leaders listen, they learn, they take the counsel of many people, they see what the circumstances are. And he's even been talking to President Obama. Beyond the sit down they had 30 hours or so after President-elect Trump won the election, they've been talking regularly on a number of issues. They talked just yesterday.
And can you give an update on what they talked about, since you just said that? We like to hear news here. They talked yesterday. How long was the conversation?
They did. About 40 to 45 minutes. And I can tell you from President-elect Trump's side that he very much enjoys speaking with President Obama, talking about the serious issues that face this country and the world. They get along nicely. They disagree on many things. That's not going to change. But there is a respect there, and there is a respect for the process and the peaceful transition of power, which is why this recount by Jill Stein and now the Hillary people is just so confounding and disappointing. Their president, Barack Obama, is going to be in office for 8 more weeks, and they have to decide whether they're going to interfere with him finishing his business, interfere with the peaceful transfer of power to President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence, or if they're going to be a bunch of crybabies and sore losers about an election that they can't turn around.
I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, but I want to focus on this conflict of interest issue that you guys are trying to work through. President-elect Trump told this to the New York Times. He believes, and obviously he legally can do this. He says he can run his business perfectly and run the country perfectly, but he knows he's got to do something. What does he plan on doing, and what is that something when it comes to not having the appearance that he's going to profit, his companies will profit off of his presidency?
First, let's be fair. It's not as if he said he's going to be doing two things at once. What he's saying is that his company could be run perfectly, and he has been very public about the fact that his 3 adult children who are involved in the company, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric, will in fact continue to have very senior roles as executives of the company. And so he has been talking to his lawyers, he's been talking to ethics compliance folks. Everything will be done the way it needs to be done. But Chuck, there's no question that we're in unprecedented times. This country's not accustomed to having a successful businessman and job creator of tens of thousands of people at the helm. We're just accustomed to typical politicians ascending through the ranks. So it is different, but it's a large part of why people elected him. And I think the presumptive negativity that some people have toward him, that he won't get this right, is counting him out and betting against Donald Trump, which is never a good idea.
Let me
get this right.
Peggy
he
Noonan.
will comply with the law.
Let me quote Peggy Noonan, no member of the liberal media. Here's what she wrote this weekend. It would be a painful act, selling the business he loves and around which he has ordered his life. But there would be comfort in this, in doing the right thing, in denying his opponents a sword, and enhancing his stature and demonstrating that, yes, he will sacrifice for his country. That's pretty great comfort. You've made your money. Now go be a patriot. She's recommending that he take the advice of the Wall Street Journal editorial page and just simply liquidate it all. Why won't he do this?
It's not that simple, and that was actually raised in that New York Times On the Record interview as well. And a couple of things that President-elect Trump said in that interview is that selling, real estate is not just selling off real estate is not just like selling stocks, and that why deny his adult children the ability to do what they do so brilliantly already, which
Why
is
won't he put the country
at the highest levels
Isn't
of the
this
Trump
a case
Corporation.
Where he should put the country ahead of himself and ahead of his children
He
in
does.
this case?
Chuck, he has put the country ahead of everything else. Just running and indeed winning and becoming the president of the United States. He has shown that he does this. He didn't need to run. He didn't. All the usual motivators are elusive to him. The power, the money, the fame, the position, the stature. He did it because he loves the country, and he doesn't like. He and 72% of the country did not like the direction in which it was going. But we have to give him. I went back and looked at what all the press clips and the conversations on shows like this were 8 years ago. It was basically debating just how cool Barack Obama is. But so we should at least, if we're not going to do that about President-elect Trump, we should at the very least trust him to do the right thing.
I understand every knee-jerk pushback is going to be to blame the media. It's a crutch. I get it, and I'm used to it.
Not by me.
But it's not the facts.
Not by me.
But let me ask you
That's
this.
not fair.
Why are you campaigning against Mitt Romney as Secretary of State?
I'm not campaigning against anyone. I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm not campaigning against Mitt Romney.
But you don't think he should be the choice?
I can't tell you. I'm not, look, Chuck, this is very simple. I'm not trying to make the news. I'm trying to reflect the news here. And I am just astonished at the breathtaking volume and intensity of blowback that I see just as one person close to the president-elect is receiving unsolicited from people on social media, and particularly in private communications. People feel betrayed to think that Governor Romney, who went out of his way to question the character and the intellect and the integrity of Donald Trump, now our president-elect, would be given the most significant cabinet post of all, Secretary of State. And that is a decision that only one man can make, President-elect Donald Trump. I will respect it and I will support it 1,000%. But I'm reflecting what the grassroots are saying.
Right.
They feel, they feel a bit betrayed to think that you can get a Romney back in there after everything he did. We don't even know if he voted for Donald Trump. He and his consultants were nothing but awful to Donald Trump for a year.
All right. Kellyanne Conway, I'm going to leave it there. Big part of the transition, former campaign manager. Thanks for coming on Meet the Press. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.